So I think we all agree that the beginning of the day started nicely. We had community response officers on scene. These are the plainclothes detectives that you see interacting one-on-one with the crowd. These are the officers that meet with the community groups in advance of these types of events to explain to them what's permissible, what's not permissible, to help them manage their own groups and demonstrations. As the day progresses, emotions tend to rise a little bit. We see small pockets of people getting disruptive, arguing with each other, fighting with each other. Again, police officers remain calm. We're there to keep the peace. We're there to separate people, not prevent them from using their First Amendment right, but to keep them safe from harming each other. When necessary, our officers stepping in between people going against each other with their voices. Additional direction, the officers are mixed amongst the crowd to ensure they have a true feel for what's going on, for the emotions that are going, for the vibe that is going on throughout the afternoon. Pause it for a second, Vince. We're going to see this fence quite a bit, but understand this fence, this may or may not be the exact one, but along Monroe, we worked with our federal partners. Remember, the President of the United States and the Vice President and other dignitaries are in the building right there. We worked with them to create a safety zone for public safety. What this does, it allows us an area to work freely. It allows our fire department an area to have ingress and egress should that be necessary. It allows ambulances, police cars, fire trucks, other law enforcement vehicles into that area. That's why this was established as an additional security zone prior to the event, part of our original planning.
That's along Monroe?
I think this one's along Monroe. We're definitely going to see the vast majority of this video is along Monroe. What I want you to also notice, in addition to metal pedestrian fencing, this yellow tape right here is police line, indicating do not cross, police line, making it very clear this is a line. Good. You can see it's starting to get a little darker. Tensions continue to flare. Emotions are starting to get the best of some people, but we remain focused on those people actively engaged in disruption. Here come some of our community response officers. They talk to the people, separate them, and allow the vast majority to go on continuing with their First Amendment rights. Continue to progress. We see some additional disturbances, and we can sense that the vibe is changing. We see people in the crowd becoming more agitated, but still a relatively peaceful assembly. People coming through here, no shirts, bouncing off people, running through, yelling. Again, that just tends to enhance the entire negative tension in these types of events. Here we are on Monroe, Donna, where we have that pedestrian fencing, and we can see our first time when people identifying themselves with Antifa signs arrive at the location. So these signs become very important as we progress through this for a variety of reasons. Our intelligence gathering, our experience in past practices lets us know that excuse me, they use those signs to conceal their identity. They use those signs to conceal their actions. And ultimately, they use the poles on those signs not only as weapons, but to dislodge and to turn over pedestrian fencing and police line fencing like we see here. The officers on the scene that day were seeing the people behind those flags, putting on masks, passing things back and forth. We believe those were water bottles. We believe those were frozen water bottles and other bits of ice. You see they've moved up to the fencing. Pause it right there for a second, Vince. So what they've done, they've moved up because at this point, and we'll see it here in just a second, they're going to try to do a couple things. But ultimately, they're going to try to breach this fencing, enter our safety area. That is problematic for a variety of reasons. Most notably, at this exact time, this is when the president is leaving the building. He is coming out into this area to be driven away from his rally. At the same time, all of the people who were inside the rally are now egressing and about to join this group in the streets. There was also quite a few people that were not able to make it in, that were still waiting in line, and they just found out that they weren't going to make it into the rally. They are also egressing. So we have a bit of a head coming together. We need to ensure that we maintain some order and some public safety so people don't get hurt. This pedestrian fencing, so you know, is mechanically tied together, and then it's also zip tied together so that we can ensure that it stays intact. The downside to that is if they use their signs and they topple that fencing, the entire line of fencing goes, including all of these people leaning against that fencing. There's concern that that would create a crush hazard, not only to those people, but then it would prevent emergency services coming in to come to their aid. Go ahead. Say. Oh, as we look here, I think we've heard some people talk about it being a very crowded section. It was a crowded section. Thank you. But behind the group of people, you can see there's about 30 or 40 feet most of the night. We actually opened up an overflow section to allow people area to safely stand. As people start to egress, you're going to see how quickly they are free to walk away from this area. They can't come to the south because of the fencing, but they're very free to leave to the east, to the west, or to the north. Again, we have the officers down here. They're not wearing gas masks. They're not wearing anything other than helmets. The reason that they're wearing helmets at this point is because for several hours now we had sporadic incidents of people throwing things at us. When we say things at us, we know that they were throwing water bottles. We know they were throwing frozen water bottles. We know they were throwing bricks, rocks, shoes, and other things, including things that were lit on fire, were coming in at us. As you look closely, you'll see, it's hard to see in, amongst all the crowd, but as it comes through, you'll see things flying through the air. This had been going on for several hours, not at any given time where there's multiple projectiles a minute for any given period of time, but over the course of several hours, officers were having things thrown at them. Right now, they're trying to breach our fence. Officers are using pepper balls. They're targeting only those people actively engaged in violence. Only this small group attempting to breach the fence is being targeted. What they're also doing is they're not using them as impact weapons at this point. They're using them to disperse powder. That's why they're striking the ground, so that the powder has an effect on this select group of people, hoping to leave all of these people out of harm's way because they're not doing anything wrong at this point. You'll see that very few of these people are immediately impacted. Yet those people that were engaged in that act are certainly stopped with their actions. That's exactly what we wanted. And in fact, the tactical commander who runs this operation at that point put everybody on hold and said, let's wait for this small dispersal of agents to take effect. Our hope is that we can disperse the group creating the chaos and the hazard while allowing the vast majority to stay and continue to voice their opinions and concerns. What happens, unfortunately, is as these people disperse, they don't leave the area. They actually intermingle and conceal themselves within the crowd. It is very difficult to tell the difference between somebody who was just engaged in that behavior and somebody else next door. There is no special jersey or anything that they wear. What you will see is that some of them are wearing masks. Some are actually, he's wearing a gas mask, I believe. You'll see people in helmets. You'll see other people concealing their identities in other ways. You'll see people with backpacks. Many of those people in the backpacks are carrying gas masks prior to anything. And they're carrying, again, frozen water bottles, and other projectiles. Again, you can see the officers calmly standing down here, monitoring the events, not wearing any gas masks. We have no reason. We have not dispersed any agent into the air. You can see how quickly these people, many of them have chosen to leave. This group is choosing to remain. It should be pretty clear that this is now an unlawful event. Early on, we heard the chief talk about them dispersing gas at us first. And that's what I want to show you here. It's going to switch angles because we've been able to compile these videos from several different angles that I think are most impactful. Pause it. This was not ours. We do not have gas that looks like this, that reacts like this. There's a couple other things that I need you to see. Pause. Hopefully you can see it bouncing through, sparking along the way. We know by its volume, its color, everything else, that is not ours. Additionally, I think it's very important to point out that we don't deploy gas behind our lines. It would be in front of our lines to dispel people and encourage them to leave the area. What you also notice is that these officers are not wearing gas masks, right? We would not deploy gas without allowing our officers to put their gas masks on because they become ineffective. So it should be very clear that this gas came in before we used any gas in this area. Pause one more time. The trouble with them using gas is multiple. It ups their level of violence, and more concerning to us is we do not know what type of gas they are using. Right? We can see it's in the air, we can see it's been dispersed, but we don't know its health hazards. We don't know what it's going to do to all of these people in the area if they inhale it, if they breathe it, if they touch it. We don't know how it's going to react. We know the type of agents that we use, we know the health hazards. We measure those health hazards against the risks that we are now facing, and we deploy them safely, and we deploy them after extensive hours and hours of training. This is a gas we do not know, and we do not know its impact on our community. That man that was filming that went inside to get away from the gas, and then you really couldn't see much from that angle, so that's why that video got cut at that location. This man here, you might recognize him from other videos. You can see he's wearing a gas mask. Again, we have not deployed any gas yet. He's already armed himself with a gas mask. Again, if you watch closely, you'll see projectiles coming in. You'll see these officers are not quite masked up yet, but very shortly they will be putting them on. After that other one, they've gotten the command. Put your mask on. They've deployed some type of agent against us. And then again, one of the officers recognized that it may be similar, but we don't know what it's mixed with. So our officers begin to mask up. You can hear people in this section yelling at people, stop throwing things at the cops. You can hear them yelling, peaceful protest. Again, if you look back at the other angles, you'll see the officers are not engaged in anything. They're standing there monitoring the activities while people within the crowd are pleading with others, stop throwing things. You're going to watch over here. It'll be circled shortly. Officers are masking up because of what we've already seen. Did it go, Vince? Not yet. Again, switch to better angle. So we're going to see another gas canister come in. It's going to land over in this general area right here. While these officers are in the process of putting on their mask, it would not be our practice or anyone's practice that does this to deploy something without allowing our officers to protect themselves first because they become ineffective. You see this small plume of smoke, some type of gas. We have not identified it. We're concerned. We're concerned for officers. We're concerned for the safety until we know exactly what it is and what hazards it presents. Notice the size. It's pretty minimal. When we look at some of the gas that we ultimately do put out, you'll see that ours has a much greater volume. Again, non-responsive officers are standing, they're monitoring, they're watching, they're working under the direction of one or two incident commanders. This right here is the first time that we deployed any type of smoke. Play it out. When I say smoke, that is different from gas. Smoke is just that. It is an inert smoke. It is meant to encourage people to leave the area. It does not have any tearing. It does not have any effect on a person's breathing or anything like that. It is inert. It is smoke only. It is meant to encourage people to leave the area. We hear people saying throwing bottles, and you'll see more things come in. You'll see our guy up here again. No, we missed him. That's all right. Throwing canisters back at us. Pause it for just a sec, Vince. So a couple things when it comes to people throwing canisters back. When we deploy canisters of gas or smoke, we deploy it into a specific area that we have chosen to allow people to safely egress from the area. It is not meant to harm them. It is meant to encourage them to leave the area. When people pick them up and throw them back at us, they have zero training in the hazards. They have zero training in where to throw them. And they end up throwing them in different locations that were not intended. So it may end up being more chaotic because they are creating it by expanding out the area where the gas or smoke is being deployed. Back up just a sec, Vince. Right before the that one that comes in and hits him.
That's it.
Okay.
Is that all police stuff going on now, or can you differentiate?
So what I can tell you is that I can't be certain, Donna. Most of this is probably police stuff, and most of it is probably smoke at this point. Shortly, we're going to get into other agents, but right now this is mostly smoke, mostly police. But we know there has already been at least 2 other ones put out by others. You can't tell what it is by the color. It's kind of the manufacturer, what they had in stock at the time, and kind of what we got. It doesn't tell you whether it's smoke or whether it's a different agent. These people clearly are not trying to leave. They're trying to be there. Sorry. Hopefully you saw that flaming one come in, strike that officer on the leg. That went quick. And bounce back out. Based on the volume, I don't believe that to be ours, but I can't be 100% sure. If you look at this one here, this is the type of volume that we look for in our equipment. That was obviously a much lower volume. Again, calm, controlled response from police. They remain under the direction of incident commanders. We don't have officers running around. We don't have officers chasing people around. Our goal right now is that people leave the area safely. We've provided encouragement through them. Some of the things that we're going through as we watch this. Oh, let's see us flag. Did I miss it? So up in this area, you'll see it. It's quick. One of the flags came in on a long pole, type of a javelin coming in. As we progress through some of our tools that we use, it starts with our verbal presence. It starts with an officer in uniform. And then as we progress and we put helmets on and we put shields on and we make announcements and we do different things, those are all intended to get people to stop criminal behavior and or leave the area. At this point, we're not pushing anybody anywhere. We're encouraging them to leave. A few minutes later, this had mostly cleared out, but we have a duty to continue. We can't just allow them to go to the other side of the building, create damage, create violence, create additional criminal acts of violence or whatever it is they intend to do. We need to make sure that we keep them in check, that they are kept nonviolent, that they are kept from criminal acts, and that other people in the area are safe. This is Monroe. Monroe, as we move north from here, we know we have open roadways, right? We have Washington, we have Jefferson, or we have Van Buren. We have open roadways to the public, and we now have a large crowd going in that general direction. The incident commanders move the officers up, again, controlled. We're not running around, listening to their directions. We now have the helicopter back overhead. We've been talking about announcements. Pause it for just a second. We could not get our helicopter in earlier because they were waiting for FAA clearance to get into that zone. It's an aircraft like any other. They need to work with our tower, and as soon as they got permission to enter that area, they did so, and they began to make announcements. As you can see, this lights up a little bit here and there. That is our aircraft lighting it up. Our aircraft is making announcements, encouraging people to disperse the area. Prior to this, in addition to all of the visual cues we were giving people, we were making individual announcements to people on the scene. We were really trying to target those people that were actively engaged in criminal acts. It's not our goal to tell everybody you have to go home. It's our goal to tell those people that are engaged in criminal acts you have to go home. And unfortunately, they did not. They did not stop. They continued to increase their level of disruption and violence, and that ends up having a negative impact on everybody. So I talked about the fencing being connected and cut. Our officers have gone up. They've cut the fence at a particular spot that we had predetermined. They've moved through, and now they're going to go move up and make sure that the crowd is continuing to disperse and, again, not create additional criminal acts. A couple of pauses in this, sorry. Here's our guy again with his gas mask that many of you probably recognize. Another flaming object thrown at police. Here you see masked people, you see people with bags, you see people with packages of water bottles wearing masks. They are throwing those water bottles, frozen or not, at police officers. We have other people, again, wearing masks. We have people over here just filming. We have people concealing and unconcealing their identity. Right here, if you look in this, you'll see a flaming object thrown at police. Have not been able to identify what that object was, but it's very clear as you look at different levels of video that it is on fire when it is thrown at police. Again, we have them throwing things at police, and we have them redistributing our gas canisters. Again, that creates additional hazard because it puts it in an area that we did not intend. Here's our guy yet again, still engaged in activity. You can hear the announcements from the helicopter being made now. And we're up to Van Buren at this point. You can see here, it's an active roadway. We have other people coming into the area. We have people traveling through the area. Again, officers, controlled line, acting under specific instructions from their commander.